listed as NAD iPad. All right, so I do have note catchers for most of you. I love how they made really bold the notification to either click OK or leave the meeting when you hit recording. I'm gonna put the link in the chat for the note catcher folder. So I created a note catcher for that's a lot. For each of you individually. See if the link works, because doesn't that look like a really long link? I think a couple of you I made more than there are here. And then a couple of you I need to go back and add your name. Before we go into you go into your individual note catcher. I want to pause just to see if anyone had any questions about the content that was shared. I don't know if all of you have completed the surveys because we didn't have a naming piece in there, but we had 7 respondents for this part of the survey related to intervention, which overwhelmingly had yes to both major questions. So the questions on whether or not to create different categories for youth, and whether or not to create some kind of standardized responses based on youth characteristics. So it looks like there is at least agreement amongst this group on in fact, Colorado should pursue something similar in both of those pieces. And what we want to try to tease out are the elements of that should be included in both pieces, both in looking at the different classifications of kids based on characteristics, and then the corresponding response times. Janelle, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was reading kind of through the things, and maybe we'll go through that more in depth, but and I can pull it up so I can actually tell you what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But on the Arizona one, I tried to look at these things, and one of their protocols was to request to locate at-risk runaway child. And I tried to click on that, and we didn't have access to like go in and see what that actual form was. And I guess what my question, I kind of want to see that form, because in Colorado, we have something called an HRV tool, which sometimes when a kid goes back to any of the jacks, and I know Beth can speak to this, like they do it there when kids come in. And I want to know if that request form kind of has things that the HRV tool have already in Colorado, and just kind of what that looks like. So I was looking for more information on that. And right now, the governor's council, we're also updating the HRV tool and all of those things too. So I just was very curious to see if we get access to what that looks like.
Okay. Yeah, let me when you guys are filling in your content in the note catchers, I'll see if I can chase that down. Any other kind of clarifying questions or anything that's top of mind before we give you a little bit of time to independently jot down your recommendations and or concerns based on what you reviewed from the other state approaches? Elizabeth, is that an okay, or did you mean to hit your raised hand icon? Got it.
Yeah, so I got a little bit overwhelmed reading through all of this stuff. So I did click that yes, we should categorize varying responses. And then I do think that we should have specific response protocols. But as far as all the details and, that's a little bit over my head.
Yeah.
And, just trying to sort through it all. So I'm going to kind of be listening today, more listening, and then maybe putting input when I see what kind of feedback you guys are offering. Because I I tried to wade through it and it just wasn't working out for me. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. I think that any input, feedback, reflections that you have from the conversation, I think would be helpful. I also think that, even setting aside the technical details of what different states are doing, if there are ideas that that you have in sort of thinking about both the different categories of or characteristics of youth and what you would want to see in the way of even just considerations in thinking about response times. I think that would be really helpful as well.
Okay. Yeah. So what I think my biggest priority that I can think of overall is, when we're considering high-risk children, like a lot of the kids, especially in the facilities, would fall under this category, right? And so I think when we're going back to having higher response, I want to see those response times more immediate to the runaway, as opposed to waiting, like within the first 24 hours, we're filling out a form and then asking the team to come in. And, that's like a lot of red tape we're going through when these kids might have only a few hours to be recovered before something happens. So.
Thank you. Yeah. So for you, when we're thinking about response times, one, making sure the response times are quick. And so what does that actually look like? And then also response actually meaning responding and doing something actively to try to locate the child versus response being, okay, so we are convening people or we are making a report or like in your mind, really clarifying that that's not actually responding to find the child.
Right. I'm talking boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Diligent search team response activated, immediately if it's a high risk situation.
Thank you. All right. I want to start getting into the meat of the matter. And I'm going to do a quick scan really quick to make sure that I have a note catcher for everyone. Beth, Dennis, Elizabeth, Annette, Becky, Janelle, I know, Kelly. I think Norma, you're the only one that I don't have. No, I got you, Norma. I don't have Anna. Okay, did the link work? Did it take you someplace where you saw a list of folders? You making a face, Beth. Is that a no?
I don't have folders. I just have initially when I opened it, it showed it was Brian Cotter's, and then I exited out and refreshed it, and then now it shows me. But I just see like the boxes of the opportunities, risk assessment, challenges, opportunities, where we can add notes. Is that what you're? But I don't have
That's
folders.
exactly right. So let me pull up. So I'm screen sharing. The link that I put in the chat should take you to this page, this tab. Is that not what it showed?
No, my link shows Beth McNally's note catcher.
Okay, let me try again.
Yeah, I got Norma's note catcher.
Do you see how
I
this
didn't even
is?
know I had a note catcher. Look I see my name.
Maybe exit out and then open it back up, because that's what I did. And initially, I was Brian's, and then it populated as mine.
Let me stop sharing really quick.
So I exited it out, went back in, and now I have Elizabeth's note catcher. So
That
this
is
weird.
Very bizarre.
Yeah, mine still says Beth McNally.
Beth, does yours say mine and together we'll all get this done or something at least?
No, I haven't exited out, so it's still mine.
Okay, try this one. This one looks like it might be more promising since it's a shorter link. Did that one work? Okay, perfect. So
now I have the folders. Doris, my name
Awesome.
is spelled wrong. Can I change it on that, or do you have to change it?
Oh, no, you can change it. If you go to the, I think you can change it. If you go to the three dots on the far right, I can change it. It's J-E, isn't it?
I fixed it. Don't worry, I've been called worse.
Okay, so I'm gonna pop in each of these just to make sure that you're good. So what we want to capture are both the things that you like with each of the questions in the opportunity sections, and the things that would be challenging or that you don't like about some of the examples that you saw. I would start with the opportunities, the things that you don't like for each of them, and then go back and do the challenges.
How do we type into the note catcher? And my note catcher looks a little odd too. Like it's not.
I would just fill in under the in the blank space underneath the blue boxes. We should have had a added a like a row underneath.
If you just click in the blue field at the end of the question, it takes you.
You can do that too.
Okay.
Let me come out and go into yours, Dennis.
Doris, did you say we're answering the first one in opportunities? How could Colorado benefit?
Yeah, I'd recommend doing the opportunities for each one, the section on risk assessment based on youth characteristics, and then doing the opportunities for state response protocols, and then come back and do the challenges. Does that make sense? So that we can make sure that we capture like the pieces that you really like before going to the challenges that you see, in case we run out of time. Oh, I thought somebody fell out. Welcome back, Norma. Your camera's on. Okay.
Oh my, that was crazy for a second. So,
It
okay.
would have been crazier if you were stepping out of the shower.
I was in the other people's thing for a minute. I don't know what happened, but I'm back here now.
Welcome back. We are in the note catchers. I'm not sure when you dropped off, but I'm repasting it in the chat. If you could go and click on the link that's in the chat, and find your name, you have an individual note catcher, and start filling out in the opportunities section for each topical area. That would be fantastic. So starting with the risk assessment based on youth characteristics opportunities, and then moving to the statewide response protocols opportunities, and then coming back and doing the challenges. Becky, were you able to get in your note catcher? It looks like we have several people in Beth's note catcher.
I'm still not able to get into mine. This is Norma. Sorry.
Do you, when you click the link that I put in the chat, what is your page? What page comes up?
It just has everybody's name and stuff.
Yeah, so if you go to the bottom where do you see the one that has your name?
Yep.
Oh,
And
it has part of Dave's name.
Click on that. Yep. And then do I press like manage access or what?
Okay, let me make sure that you have access. Okay, it says anyone with the link should be able to see it. I'm putting yours directly in the chat.
Okay.
See if you can access it that way. Anyone else having trouble with their specific note catcher? Are you able to get in, Norma?
Still trying.
Is it giving you a message or is it like just thinking?
Well, I'm in it, but this isn't where I need to be, I don't think. I've got like all of these, like everything that we've done so far is what I'm looking at. So is there a specific one that I need to be in?
So there is one for everyone to put their notes in on the opportunities and challenges for both kind of policy that we're approaches that we're looking at. One is having different characteristics of youth. And so the risk assessment based on youth characteristics.
Yeah, I'm not
and
seeing.
then that's not what you show.
Mm-mm.
That's very odd. Can you do a quick screen share?
Maybe.
There should be a green button on the bottom that says share screen.
I'm on my iPad, so it's not showing me that.
I don't know anything about that.
Yep.
Sorry, I just jumped into the conversation. Is everyone having problems accessing the resource? Because
No.
I could email a PDF.
They're trying to get into their she's trying to get into the note catcher.
Oh, okay. I guess you could always open up a Word doc and just take those notes there and share them with us later if that helps with the problem.
I'm in the intervention group.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm gonna put the prompts in the chat for you, Norma. So we're gonna go a little bit lower tech just so that you have them. And then if you want to just take notes and then we can have a discussion here shortly. Oh, that I meant to do I'm gonna do this again. Because I forgot to do my control or my alt enter to actually put the spaces. Do you see the first set of prompts in the chat? Okay, fantastic. I just sent that just to Brian. All right, so Norma, I put the prompts in the chat so that you can see them since you're having trouble with your Google Doc. And we'll capture your thinking in the conversation. So we'll give you another 3 minutes and then we're gonna open it up for discussion. I'm wondering if several of you, Beth, I see you're still typing. Dennis, you are as well. Jamel is ticking along.
Yeah, I'm still going. I'm writing my butt off over here.
I see.
We love to hear it.
All right, Kelly, it looks like you're wrapping up the challenges. All right, you have about another 30 seconds or so. We are scheduled to go to be in our breakout room until 9:30. So we'll have about 30 minutes for conversation. All right. So I want to start with the first set of opportunities for risk assessment based on youth characteristics. The first question, how could Colorado benefit from implementing risk assessment based on youth characteristics? And feel free to jump in. I'm happy to call on folks, but would love to get some volunteers on just what you're thinking in terms of the potential benefits to Colorado of implementing a risk assessment based on youth characteristics.
When I was thinking this through, I think one of the benefits is that okay, so when I ran a facility, the police would also you make a notification for a child or youth that goes on the run. That takes resources for them to take the report. There were some children or youth that would just run, like not really run, but they would like leave several times a day to do things like going out to the 7-Eleven and smoke a cigarette. And so you're probably not going to want to call the police to make a response or every single time a youth does that. But there are other youth that are way higher risk that as soon as they leave the facility, you probably do want to make a notification. So that's why I like this.
Thank you. Others? So what are some of the things that you think would be necessary in order for an approach like this to work in Colorado?
I think it's not difficult to do this in Colorado. What I like about it, and I also when we look at the other models, I'm going to say pretty much the same thing. We would just need to write rules, county-facing rules and provider-facing rules to ensure that everybody was following the protocols. Right now, we don't really have a standardized way of doing this. So I like the idea that it would become standardized and everybody would be doing the same thing.
Thank you. Others? Brian, why'd you come off mute?
Well, I
That's
don't
easy.
want to take away speaking time from anyone, but just Dennis, I'd be interested to hear. So if this was to be replicated in Colorado, what characteristics would you think, or what sorts of like different thresholds would be useful to not include the kid down at 7-Eleven or whatever, but how would this be meaningfully implemented for you?
Well, I've been given a little bit of thought of this to this. So to me, like uh, somebody that's highly susceptible to sex trafficking, you would want to identify that, right? And if you identified that and made that part of the protocol when you're making your notification to law enforcement would know possibly where might be a high risk area for that youth to be, right? So I can see something like that being helpful. And then I think too, like when you have like highly suicidal youth, you probably want an immediate response, and then that would notify police that, hey, maybe we need to be looking in this specific area for this youth because they're high risk for suicide. I'm not sure like how we would make differentiations yet for youth that I mean, maybe it would be just like a classification for youth that frequently leave the facility and come back because they're less at a safety risk. I mean, but I don't know quite how to do that yet, but I think we could do it.
I have a question, and this is something that just happened in the past few weeks from Beth's office. There was a high risk youth, and she ran, and because she was high risk for sex trafficking, someone from her office knew that, called to figure out where does she frequent, who are her friends, what do we know about this, to go back. So they do already have some form of like a outreach or response to this specifically. And that's why I know that there's other ones, but And that's why I keep saying, like, let's build on the models that we have to kind of cherry pick those things to fill the gaps, because there are already a lot of good things in place. So Beth should talk on that. I'm calling you out, Beth. Sorry.
Sure. So we do have a tiered response. So we took over taking runaway reports in Denver. We have a tiered response, identifying as low, moderate, or high risk. One of the notes that I listed out was, obviously this is very fluid. To Dennis's point, yeah, we have youth who leave, and we're now taking reports directly from out of home placement, and it's like, all right, this is that youth that's going to come back within that hour, or maybe a few hours. And so not necessarily dedicating the same level of response. However, I think it's crucial that the information that's being gathered is the same across the board, because these cases are very fluid, and we could have, yeah, this was a youth who's just, going to that 7-Eleven, but then all of a sudden now things have escalated and they're gone for 24, 48 hours. And I think it's imperative to get that information on the front end, as opposed to then being like, oh, all right, this seems like there's more to it. Let's try and call the facility back. And then the same goes with really calling all of, like, what we have found since taking this over in the last 3 weeks is we end up being the person that notifies parent or guardian, and really establishing a process of, like, so if we have a youth who runs on Friday, we have partnered with NCMEC, so we're making that referral directly so that it's meeting that mandate. Because you think about it, like, all right, we take the report, by the time it gets to that DHS caseworker, and they're gone that whole weekend, and they're not getting it until Monday or Tuesday when they start their shift. So that's another way we have implemented this. And then again, to Janelle's point, being able to partner with NCMEC has allowed for us to get posters out very quickly, getting them geared up. And then we have a very close partnership with DPD, who have helped facilitate getting out missing youth flyers to our transit partners, other agencies. So there's progress, but this is obviously very just Denver based.
Are there components related to the youth's characteristics that are considered in the low, moderate, and high response that could be considered for, like, a statewide standardized approach?
Yeah, some of that is covered in some of the examples that Brian had provided with other states. Certainly, that if there's that concern of the sexual exploitation or trafficking piece, that's obviously high risk. We also break down substance use concerns, right? And differentiating between, right, is this someone who's using marijuana intermittently versus, we have high risk youth who are using meth and fentanyl. That's quite different. We also, similar to, like, the checklist and searches, we're looking at, we use various databases. We have access to DPD's records management system. We have access to Lumen to check to see if there's additional information or other, like, contact that maybe we're not aware of, or that the facility may not be aware of, or parent or guardian has not released. What else? Gang affiliation. I have it up right now.
Yeah, and these are all used in determining what the response might be.
Yeah, so we ensure that our screening process is the same, because that's one of the things too, is when it being reported to law enforcement, each agency might be a little bit different. And I will say, like, some of these missing youth or runaway reports are very bare bones. And that's one of the things we've tried to change, because it's like, especially with the youth who run away repeatedly, if you're detailed in that information, that might, right, if a youth is located at a certain park, we'll now know, hey, look, the next time they run, let's go check that park. So being really detailed in the information gathering and then the documentation piece. We've also found that it's really important to notify in like the partnership with schools, because oftentimes with youth running, they may still continue to go to school, or that they might have like that safe, trusted adult. And then the other aspect that we ensure to cover is if high risk youth is located, my team will respond out to meet with that youth to provide safety planning. And I apologize, I don't remember which state. I think it was DC that does a run protocol for like preparing, kind of like if you were to run again, like what would that look like, who's that safety person, and really identifying, right, who could this youth turn to.
Thank you. Brent, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Beth, for all those examples. Just a general question I have. So the idea that the task force is, tasked with making recommendations around policy. So if there are elements of this component that we like, of the high risk classifications, just the next step would be, if the task force likes it, doesn't like it, and then what kinds of policy recommendations they might be making around that. Like, would we require that facilities use these designations during the intake process, or suggest their use, or create, hold up like a model unit to consider, or just there are so many different verbs that the state can use in whatever we put, maybe eventually becomes parts of statute or regulation from these recommendations. So just thinking about, I guess, the assertiveness with which the state would want to utilize this mechanism is just another important conversation for the task force to have. Like, what do we recommend they do around this? Just wanted to put that in there because eventually that's what we'll have to write up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brent. I think for the it seems like there is pretty wide agreement that there should be some kind of tiering of characteristics of the youth, and we started to flesh out some of those pieces in our conversation. I think in addition to the characteristics for assessing for risk, is also the associated responses. And I think, Elizabeth, this is some of what you were getting at earlier in terms of wanting there to be like more explicit requirements around responses that are consistently applied, and that really do spell out what it means to respond, boots on the ground, versus like administrative functions. And so I want to shift our conversation to that piece with roughly 15 minutes left in our time. Janelle, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just to kind of speak to the responses, one of them, I cannot remember the state, maybe it was Arizona, maybe, I don't know, but it was immediate reporting of that. And I know like here at times it's 24 hours, which a lot can happen in 24 hours, but having some type of protocol, what would make it rise to the level of immediate reporting? Like Dennis was saying, not everything needs to be immediate reporting. And so kind of having a formula or a checkbox of, okay, this kid, what does it look like? This is what's going to be immediate reporting, or this is what is not. Like, okay, we have 24 hours to see because this kid comes back a lot or just runs down the street for a minute. And only the people that they're placed with is going to really know the answers to those, and have to make a best judgment call on that. But some type of protocol and checkbox for what requires immediate. So it's not, and I say this because I've just seen a lot of situations where I definitely think it should rise to a level of immediate reporting, and so does everyone on the team, but then DHS doesn't. And so, not to throw anyone under the bus here, but sometimes forcing that hand a little bit to make sure that there is that immediate reporting, even if it's to a group or whatever, a plan like Beth was talking about, then they're jumping on it quicker, or something, who they're reporting it to. And if it doesn't rise to that level of immediate to law enforcement, then it needs to at least be reported to a team that is doing that response, like her team is, just something along those lines.
Yeah, and I think that there are two pieces, right? There is the reporting requirement that would be based on certain characteristics of the youth, and also actually doing something to locate the youth that I'm hearing should also have some kind of tiering that includes immediate, but then also some additional levels. And so I want to unpack that a little bit. I'm going to go to, only because I lost track of who raised their hand first. I'm going to go to Beth, Elizabeth, and then Norma.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So with us taking overruns, we do have an immediate response that goes straight to patrol for that response. So if, right, 11 years and under, or if the youth is a danger to themselves or others, or kind of similar to what was outlined in regards to like needing immediate, medication or medical attention, that would first go to law enforcement. And I think that this does need to have that partnership so that we can have that response, but also, as we've continuously talked about, that training piece, so that they know that when they are engaging, they're aware of like the trauma response. And then if law enforcement does come in contact, that there's that immediate, that partnership with DHS so that they're responding out right away, or whether it's a JAC, somewhere where this youth is then being provided some, like a de-escalation area, basic needs, and then following up with that, like kind of check in, and as Janelle talked about, like the HRV tool or whatever, the screening that Tennessee has.
Are there components that you saw, Beth, in any of the examples that might be enhancements to what your team is doing in Denver as we think about interventions that could be applied statewide?
Well, ours is a little bit different, right? Because it's all voluntary. But I certainly think like there's flaws with doing a checklist on like the back end immediately, because oftentimes when we take the report that youth has been located, 99% of the time the youth is like, I'm not willing to talk about anything, and everything was fine. And so there does need to be, if we do have this, like, okay, you're immediately meeting with the youth, I think it's a safe bet that this youth is not going to maybe disclose anything at that time. And so there needs to be kind of like a secondary, like maybe a week, or giving that power and choice of like, hey, I'm going to check back in with you, because I feel like within a week or two, you're probably going to get more information as to what that looks like. Does that answer your question, Doris?
It does. Thank you. Elizabeth?
Well, I just wanted to say, it is important to have some kind of checklist or standardized response, because like Timmy's runs, he would run from my house, and the longest he would be gone is like 4 hours. And then he would always call and say, I want to come home. Right. But that was me. And he was always continually expressing suicidal ideation. But when he was home, it was different. But so if I put him in someone else's care and he runs, I expect them to know that not only is he going to run, but he is also a suicidal risk, because I'm going to, they need to make sure they're taking that seriously. Whereas for me, I mean, it was kind of like an ongoing thing, but then if he had a medication change and he's in a new environment, it might suddenly become a real intent, right? So they need to know not only his run history, but also that he has this high risk piece, and be able to communicate that to whoever they're reporting it to.
Thank you. Norma?
Yeah, so I'm just I guess I would just caution us or express a little concern about it being so subjective that like a counselor, a milieu counselor or something, is the one who has to like sort of make the judgment call in that moment about whether or not the child is at high risk. I think that's just, I don't know. I would just caution us to put that in the hands of, a milieu person. So I'm not sure like who would make that call to say the child is high risk or not. Because it sounds like what we're saying is if the child is very high risk, we're going to elevate the intervention or, whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that brings us back to the state examples, because some of the states had protocols and tools to use for assessing risk and determining the appropriate response. So then I come back to this idea of, whether there are in any of the state examples something that you like that, seem to make that decision making less subjective and more consistently applied across youth, so that, that there was just a consistent determination of risk level. Beth, I see your hand up.
Yeah, along those lines, I mean, just what I've experienced through my career and now currently with taking this over, it being subjective on the other side of things, we've had professionals who are like, I've dealt with this family, and really minimizing the risk or minimizing what the youth is reporting.
Yes.
And that's extremely harmful. So yeah, that's a current concern that we're coming up against.
So would a tool be helpful? And if so, are there in any of the state examples something that you think could be adapted for Colorado? Or would you have to create something maybe brand new?
So, Janelle had mentioned, we're both a part of a work group that's changing the HRV tool. I think that it's a flawed tool. I think what has been pushed out and is still in the review process is something that is better, but yet still flawed. And again, like part of my job is reviewing, all the screening tools that a JAC is going to run a youth through. And right when they're taken into custody, oftentimes like I'll see a tool and the answers are just completely no, and the youth was not willing to engage. And so, I mean, that in and of itself is kind of useless. Where we've expanded on the HRV tool is recognizing that some of the questions that are being asked are not necessarily directly coming from parent or guardian or youth. It could be coming from trails, and there's a history of this or that documentation, or maybe there were law enforcement reports. And so I just don't think one given tool is ever going to really give you a clear picture, but I do think, I guess I err on like something's better than nothing. At least also to be able to review back to, especially with those chronic runs, to see if there's a pattern.
Is the HRV tool used after the youth is located? Or is it used to sort of assess what the response might be once a youth leaves?
DHS is mandated upon a youth being recovered to complete the HRV tool. And then the HRV tool is also used by every JAC when a youth is has been arrested.
So then right now, is there a tool that's used to evaluate the risk a child might have, like whether it's suicidal ideation or attempts, whether it's that this youth has high acuity medical needs, or is at a greater risk of trafficking or sexual exploitation? Is there anything that's used today to evaluate the risk of a youth, like in a standardized kind of way?
So my understanding is so I know diversion, they'll use the MAISY for like mental health aspects. And then the HRV tool is specific for sexual exploitation, human trafficking, labor trafficking.
Can it be completed before the youth is found?
So yes. Right. If we have someone who's working with a youth, we might say, hey, can you fill this out? It shouldn't ever be that the tool itself should not be administered where it's a just like sit down with the youth and run through the questions. That would be as it is now, really harmful. But that is probably how it's being administered.
Thank you.
Especially at the jacks.
So when you think about the levels, like the risk levels, I heard immediate. Are there other levels that you think are worth noting as you think about kind of the risk levels of youth? Is that sorry, I heard high, moderate, low. Beth, I think that's sort of like the framework that you use. And then on the response times, I heard immediate was the only one that I heard explicitly. So I want to come back to both of those and just get a sense of the framework that you would want to use for both the risk level for the youth. Is that high, moderate, low? And then come back to the response, whether that's immediate and whatever other levels. Any thoughts there? Do we like the high, moderate, low? Beth, I see you shaking your head. I'm thinking of trying to build off of, to Norma's point. I think it was Norma. It might have been Janelle, but what you already have in Colorado that could be leveraged and built on.
Yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be a one, like the information gathering should be consistent across the board on every case. But in regards to whether law enforcement, you're partnering with law enforcement to respond to Elizabeth, right? Like boots on the ground out there, right? That's that immediate. High, maybe this is a high risk youth that, well, and in this case, all of them would be reported to NCMEC. But maybe getting missing flyers distributed out to law enforcement, where maybe known locations. I think the other aspect of this too, where we have seen some success thus far, is trying to directly communicate with the youth. Now, I realize not in every case, like they might not have phones but really gathering that information and attempting to make contact directly with the youth. I think that should be built in really on every case.
And so I saw you nodding on the high, moderate, low. And then I think on the responses, you included some examples of what might be included in the different response levels. Any others?
This is Norma. I would just like to echo the consistency around information gathering is, I think, pretty important.
Is there a tool that exists today that you'd want to build off of, or would you like to look at, some of the tools that are used in the other states? Or just for information gathering purposes?
I don't know of a specific tool for information gathering. I imagine that every provider has kind of their own way of getting information, I would think, but I'm not sure. Beth, do you know?
Yeah, I think it varies, and I'm trying to pull up too many screens up. It's like Tennessee's, I think has a good example that we could potentially tailor after. My only concern with Tennessee is their mandate when they have if there's concerns of sex trafficking, that they immediately take the youth to the hospital, even without their consent, having sat with survivors and waiting for a SANE exam. Like, I mean, that's their choice and power and control has been taken away from them. So to just simply go to the hospital and have them sit in a waiting room for a couple hours to wait for a SANE nurse, I think is really harmful.
Agreed. Can I chime in on that, Beth, just to add on that?
Yeah, we'll take your comment, Janelle, and then we'll wrap up and head to the main room.
I agree with Beth on that, for a lot of reasons, and for the reason she said, but at the same time, like, no hospital is going to hold down a youth and force a SANE exam anyway. So taking them there when it's not their choice to go there does nothing anyway. It does nothing. It traumatizes them and it results in nothing. And not to mention either, just because they were on the run and they're high risk of sex trafficking, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've been doing it in the last couple days that would warrant or give them anything from a SANE exam anyway. So there's other factors that go into that for that to be the immediate response. So you could put that in the response of the protocol, but you would need to put additional questions and factors to fall in for all of those things.
Thank you. Any last thoughts before we get ready to head back to the main room? All right. Real quick, we will need a volunteer to share out just some of our conversation that we've had today, and to work with Brian and maybe Jordan, or is it just you, Brian?
Just me.
Okay, just Brian. In case that changes your attitude, whether it to work with Brian to develop one pager that would then be reported out to the task force in our next meeting. And Beth, I think you were the volunteer last time, so hopefully someone else will raise their hand. The heavy lift really is Brian and Jordan. In this case, only Brian.
I would absolutely.
Janelle, I saw you came off mute.
No, I know. And I'm just going to just defend myself for a minute. I would absolutely do that. But the next meeting that we're having, I'm scheduled to be in trial, so I won't even be here probably. And so I'm sorry.
So
but
here you go with
when we're done, I
Thanks,
volunteer
Janelle.
as tribute in a couple months.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that because we're recording. So anyone who wants to not come off mute and make excuses, but who wants to actually volunteer would be fantastic. I'm teaching. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you did the laughing emoji because sometimes my sarcasm doesn't land quite right.
You offend me none. Keep going.
All right, we need a volunteer, guys. Everybody starts looking down and looking away.
And so what I would do, like this is what Beth experienced last time, is I would take a first attempt at some draft language and then invite you in. So you'd have something to respond to, and then we would brush that up and tailor it to get the draft language we would then bring to the full group. So it really is a pretty, I would take the first crack at it. So it, depending on what Beth thinks, hopefully wouldn't be that huge of a lift for the volunteer.
Very painless.
What'd you say, Beth?
I said it's very painless. It's a piece of cake. Brian does all the work.
Janelle, we believed you the first time.
No one's responding. It's very awkward for me. Okay. I would have totally by now, but I can't.
I'll do it again.
Okay, well, this
Thank
is
you,
normal. I
Beth.
was gonna say I would do it, but you want me to do it, Beth?
Sure.
Yay, Norma. I knew if we
Whatevs.
just sat in the uncomfortable silence for as long as it took, somebody will be like, well, I'll just do it. Damn.
Right. Okay. So Beth and Brian. So Brian, you create something and then you send it. Is that the deal? And then Beth, what did you do with it? You just like make sure it's like captured everything.
I'll write something up and send it to you, and then I'll work with you. We can meet up at some point just on a video call to talk through it, and then I'll try to capture any comments you have on things to include or take out.
Okay.
So I would do both rounds of the draft thing.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Thank you for volunteering.
I wouldn't lie to you.
And I'll go ahead and report out on our conversation to make it a little bit easier for folks. I'll report out today, and then Norma, you're going to work with Brian for the next meeting. Perfect. All right, I think we're ready to go back to the main room.
I sent the link again in the chat for everybody to go back.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. Bye all. Anna, can we help you?
No.
Okay, we're going back to the large group. So
did I not click over there? I'm sorry, I thought I clicked the link.
No,
I will just join from the original link. Thank you.
You see, I have a link in the chat if that's helpful for you.
That's what I clicked, and that's what brought me back here.
Oh, okay.
So I've been having trouble with my Zoom all day.
Have you?
I'll do it from the
Okay.
original link.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to try it again, nobody else has come back in. So just try it again. It's right, in the chat.
Okay. My chat cleared because I got out and came back. I'll do it from the original link.
Let me paste it again for you. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, try it. I'll wait till you get over there. Oh, it is. It's sending you back here. Yeah. Hi, Anna. It's so weird. Do you have an email that I can send it to you to make it easier? Anna?
Sorry. I'll just do the original link.
Oh, okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure. All right. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.